Colin.
Well, I'll let that simmer for a week or so and then then reach out to him and let him know that we've heard back from this appraiser. So thank you for turning that around so quickly.
I think this is a great idea. I'm glad you suggested. Hopefully it'll work.
I'm gonna put these in order quickly and then I'll give it back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anytime after the meeting or something.
And this is for you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, good. I was gonna ask you for that.
Background reading for you.
Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Good work. Okay, where to go? Am I on? Yeah. Okay, good evening, everyone. Gonna call the Comfort Lake Forest Lake regular board meeting together to order today. It's February 8th, a little past 6:30. So why don't we start with a roll call?
Yep.
Derek or Tori, thank you.
Manager Baki,
I'm here.
Manager Taves. Manager Lowe,
Here.
President Schmaltz,
Here,
Manager Anderson.
Here.
okay, thank you. So next
President
item,
Schmaltz,
yes,
would you like me to go over a quick
Oh.
recap of the muting and unmuting permissions?
yes, yeah, that would be great, Emily, so everybody can relax a little bit more. So go ahead and explain what we've been able to do. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, thank you. So just very quickly, we've tightened up security on our Zoom a little bit. Attendees will not be able to unmute themselves without permission. That being said, known names, so the board members and staff and EOR, I can make you a co-host and you should be able to mute and unmute yourself at will. And use the chat and screen share if you need to. Co-host permissions me as the host on Zoom, I can revoke those at any time and still remove someone from the meeting if needed, but co-host permissions will only be granted to those whose names we know. And other attendees, members of the public, won't be able to unmute themselves, but they can use the reactions and raise hand, or they can use a chat, which will only send to hosts and co-hosts and request to speak. And then we can allow them permission to temporarily unmute.
Okay, great, thanks, Emily, appreciate that support, thank you. Okay, moving on then to item number 2, setting the meeting agenda. Are there any suggested changes or corrections from the board? Okay, if not, I have one that we want to add. I want to add a Administrator Kinney review session again as the last item on the agenda, which would become item number 7. And then 8 would be the adjourn item. So we'll look forward to doing that later on in the meeting.
Is that a closed session or?
It'll be a closed session, yes. Questions?
Mr. President, managers, I don't know if you wanted a little update on the Moody Lake project, or we'll do maybe.
I thought we would do that in projects.
Project update.
Yeah.
Yes, okay,
That's fine. I think he has some slides in it, doesn't he?
yes,
I took a look. That's fine.
all right, do that.
Thanks. Okay, then we'll need a motion to set the agenda as amended by myself.
So moved.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Troy, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Lowe.
Aye.
President Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. The agenda has been set. Moving on to new business. The first item is the Clean Water Fund Grant Agreement.
Mr. President, managers, as you've been previously informed, the district had applied for and received a Clean Water Fund grant for, the, Sly Avenue feedlot, project area, so this has been kind of an ongoing, site location district has previously identified. We're working with the landowner on, particularly, Aiden and to a smaller extent myself. But, right now, we're just looking to execute the, well, there's two, motions, that have been provided. And, so one is to make a transfer and the other is to adopt a resolution.
Okay, are there any questions?
Yeah, I have some, but do
Manager?
you want me to make the motion first?
We have two, let's make the first motion, which has to do with the budget
Or should we
adjustment.
just talk about it first?
Let's just talk
Yeah.
about it. I think it's
Yeah,
gonna be
I
straightforward
think-
with two motions.
Well, I just wanted to clarify whether this was a $90,000 grant in total or a $99,000 grant in total. It was unclear to me. The first paragraph made it sound like it was 90,000, and then the 10% was part of that. But then
10%
down below, it made it sound like it was additional to. So what did the grant letter say? Is it a $90,000 grant or a $99,000 grant with a 10% of that is a match?
The latter, the
Okay, $99,000?
$90,000 grant and then 10% match.
The resolution says 90, so,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
so the actual monies from the grant then is 81,000.
No, it would be 90 and then we would have a 10% match of 9,000.
Okay, all right, so it's not part of the total, it's additional to, okay,
The transfer then would be 99 because we want to exclude our portion.
okay, but our portion doesn't have to be dollars. It can be a grant or it can be in kind, so,
Yes.
okay. So is that just safety? Transferring it all is just a safety measure, or?
Well, rather than, correct, I mean,
Okay.
we don't have to spend the money. Of course, we don't know what the cost will be.
Well, I'm not
Right.
talking about that, I'm
Right.
talking about, we can use in kind, so our personnel costs,
Right,
our overhead costs. And that's a pretty small amount, so with a grant like, or a project like this, we should be able to cover that with in kind, correct? So it's not an actual dollar contribution.
well, correct, but you're paying the staff, which then has town reporting and everything, so it's, I mean, it has to be quantified and put into dollars. So there's-
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but it's not an actual dollar amount that we have to spend. Because we're already spending that for overhead and,
correct,
okay,
yes, from that standpoint, yes, correct.
all right. Well, that's the only question I had then, is that, you know, securing what the actual dollar amount was, and then do we have to take that match at this time and move it into that line item?
Okay, anything else, Manager Anderson?
No, I just
Okay,
need an answer to that, that's all. Do we need to do it now, or can we do it later?
It just would, I mean, it just would save us from having to bring it back, I guess, that was the simplest thing, and then if we didn't spend it, then it just doesn't get spent. But,
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep an eye on that, because clearly that's, you know, what I'm trying to do is make sure that we're not spending our reserve dollars on matches when there's other avenues. Okay,
yes,
all right,
Right.
thank you.
mhm. Yes, and Emily's been very good about
Mhm,
tracking that and submitting it, et cetera, so, for the match.
okay,
okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion for the, stating the motion, first one motion.
all right, I'll make the motion to amend the 2024 budget for account 5-224. There's nothing else beside that, right? And it's, oh, I'm sorry, 224-A, and then School Lake Agricultural BMPs to 99,000, and to transfer 99,000 from account 000-2900, our reserve fund, to account 5-224-A.
We have a second to that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Manager Baki. Let's do a roll call of that one, then go to the second one.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves. Manager Lowe.
Aye.
President Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. So I'll make the next motion, which is number 2. Manager Schmaltz moves to adopt resolution 24-02-01. And we need a second on that motion.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Manager Lowe. Okay, so, Tori, could you do a roll call again?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves. Manager Lowe.
Aye.
President Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
That motion carries. Okay, thank you. Item B is the Lower St. Croix supplemental grant funds awarded.
Mr. President, managers, Manager Anderson, if you want to speak to this particular topic or memo as such regarding the additional watershed basin implementation funding.
Well, this is just that extra money that was made available, and
Right.
this is just a required partner document that needs to be approved and signed by each partner. I think there's 16 of us left, and so that's all this is. And I'll just make the motion. I move to approve an amendment to the fiscal year 23 watershed-based implementation fund work plan to include $167,615 in supplemental grant funds and authorize the Lower St. Croix Steering Committee to direct these supplemental funds toward activities that must most effectively meet goals of the Lower St. Croix Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan.
And I'll second that motion.
And I just want to state that I made it clear through questioning that this is going to follow the same pattern of approval process. So anything below 50,000, the steering committee can push through. Anything above that has to come to the steering committee, excuse me, to the policy committee. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on that first motion? Okay, hearing none, then I'll ask Tori to do a roll call vote.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
President Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, first motion carries. And we have a second motion then also, which has to be covered. Did you want to say anything about, well, let's make the motion first, then we can talk about it. I'll move to authorize the district administrator to submit an application to the Heath Avenue IESF feasibility study to the LSC WBIF grant program and execute the grant sub-agreement if awarded. We need a second to that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Manager Anderson. Now, are there any questions or comments or clarifications?
Mr. President, so we're, as you know, we close out the grant on the Little Comfort drainage area project that included the gravel pit and then the original wetland restoration piece that we were not able to accomplish for a variety of reasons. Third on the list, we attempted to bring forth the idea of this iron hand sand filter, similar to what we did on County Road 50. We've been working with a landowner. We have they've been supportive. We have a letter of support from them on that. And but one of the things right now is one of the eligible expenses is this feasibility study. So Emily had made the suggestion that we perhaps go through the Lower St. Croix to access some of this watershed basin implementation money to help fund that portion. Because we will want that feasibility as part of the negotiate or part of the sequencing of steps to acquire the property and then ultimately submit a grant application to the Clean Water Fund, because this would be a larger grant request later down the road.
Was that part of what we sent to them earlier?
It was not.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none then, why don't we, have Tori do the roll call vote?
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
President Schmaltz,
Aye,
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
okay, motion carries. So that concludes all the items we had for new business. Moving on into old business, nothing on the agenda for tonight.
Mr. President. We should have the.
Joint powers.
Oh, joint powers, sorry, I'm sorry. Mike, you want to take that? Or is it Garrett gonna cover it?
Right, yeah, Gary Mellish this evening, and it's this similar agreement we've had for, I think, the last 13 or 14 years with Chisago County. Go ahead, Gary.
Mr. President, managers, that's basically the gist of it. Same standard agreement that we've had with them, like Mike said, for a number of years. Beth and I actually met with Chisago County today and discussed kind of the program, some of the goals for the year and maybe some new initiatives to implement. So we have a little more back and forth with them, but we're looking forward to the partnership again.
Okay, thank you, Garrett. Any questions or comments? I just had one, Garrett. I think, last year last couple of years, it's been difficult to find and hire people sometimes. Although last year we had a lot of repeats coming back, which was great. I think it's a good testimonial to the fact that we've done a really good job working with our people. Is there a need to maybe put a little cushion in that in some way, or do you have a cushion built already in terms of somebody leaves and we're short and so forth? Have you thought about that, or was that a concern?
About having enough watercraft inspectors to meet goals.
Right.
Fortunately, yeah, you're right. We've made some compensation changes in the last couple of years that have made us very competitive when compared to other organizations with watercraft inspection programs, and then just other general kind of entry-level jobs in the area. So that plus some bonuses for returning inspectors. Yeah, we have built a group of individuals that seem to be really enjoying the position and coming back. And earlier this week, I reached out to past watercraft inspectors to see who would be interested in returning. I want to offer the position to them first before accepting and reviewing new applications. And I can say already we have at least several. So I'm pretty optimistic that this year we're going to have a pretty full team of inspectors again.
Okay, that's good to hear.
It's wonderful to hear, and it was nice to hear, last year as well, but I've been talking to Garrett just casually about this county grant program for lake associations in Chisago. And one of the things that I asked about this year, if we could use that money for additional boat inspections, if we wanted to go beyond the number of hours that the district has, kind of like you guys do, I think.
Sure.
And that money is approved to be used that way. So the board is meeting tonight, and so I'll have something to discuss with you probably next week, Garrett, about how many hours that is. So we're excited about that.
Good, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
It's nice when we get more partners working together. That just
Mhm.
strengthens the whole program and
Mhm.
strengthens our whole position in getting grants and everything
Yeah,
else. So
yeah.
wonderful. Mike?
Mr. President, Gary, just wonder if you want to just touch on the sort of three-prong approach that we have for watercraft inspectors. It's the DNR, Chisago County, and then the district zone. So those are separate, but you help coordinate it, and this is the coordination part with Chisago. So we give them the money. They find their own staff to hire, and then we have our own program or that we are hiring and managing.
Okay.
So, and then Gary, you can speak to that too, and how much comes from the DNR does and things like that too, right?
Right, yes. The compensation component of what I was explaining was definitely more of an internal, what we're doing, but for the motion that we'll carry out now or here soon is that joint powers agreement with Chisago County. They have also made some changes last year with their compensation. They did a salary survey county or organization wide and raised the pay rate for all their inspectors by $1 or more. So I think that has also made them competitive, and they were able to fill 4 watercraft inspector positions for us last year, which is the number that they're looking for. So again, I'm pretty confident that between us, this joint powers agreement with Chisago County and the DNR, that we should be able to reach our goals.
Okay, thanks, Jared.
President Schmaltz.
Yes, Beth, go ahead.
And Garrett has already, as he said, completed the job descriptions and the postings. There's a career fair tomorrow for the University of Minnesota Natural Resources students and graduates from not just the university, but from kind of greater area. They come from all parts. We'll also be looking at some of our seasonal help, and within that, we do have the option to have them go through the watercraft inspector training and fill in hours if we need to do that. So that's kind of our padding, I guess, if you will. Garrett doesn't anticipate having to use that, but we do keep it in there as kind of an extra if we need it.
Good, okay, good to hear. All right, would somebody like to make the motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the joint powers agreement between Chisago County and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District for cost sharing of the boat launch inspection program.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
So Manager Anderson seconded. So is there any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay, hearing none, then, Troy, why don't you go ahead? Yep.
Yep, sorry. Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Lowe.
Aye.
President Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on then to old business, where there is none, we'll then move on to program projects updates. And the first one is Education and Outreach Program.
Wonderful. Tori's gonna pull up the presentation tonight. Thank you, President Schmaltz and managers and everyone present. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of give you an update on the Education Outreach Program. I'm going to be leading this. I believe that Adam Chalm was going to try to join us tonight and be here to at least listen to the presentation, but since he's only been here 2 weeks and 1 day, I felt that I could give an assist and share an update on the work that we've been doing since Jessica left, and then also the work that Adam is doing as he hits the ground running. All right, so the first couple of slides are going to be kind of the slides that kind of ground us in the watershed management plan. Education outreach is identified in the plan, and there are 2 main goals: increasing public knowledge of and appreciation for human impacts to surface water, groundwater, and natural resources, to increase target audiences' behaviors that positively impact water resources, and then also communicate district programs, projects, and other initiatives to the public in a clean, consistent, and equitable manner. So those are the goals that we're working towards. So to get to those goals, we see our work in really 3 main themed areas. Increasing knowledge on specific water-related topics to create that behavior change and adoption of environmental practices. The second would be promote the general activities of the district to increase understanding of and support of the district. And then promote specific activities of the district to increase an understanding of and support for the district. Now, generally, you know, on this slide, we kind of relate, you know, the first one to our goal 1, the second to kind of to goal 2. I actually kind of put forth that there's a lot of crossover, and in fact, you know, increasing knowledge on specific water-related topics to create behavior change and adoption of environmental practices is very closely aligned to goal 2 and those specific programs of the district. So, you know, we see a lot of crossover, we see a lot of interconnectedness. And so when we're doing education and outreach, you know, we want to be targeted and we want to, you know, be able to have measurement, but we also know that it's a very holistic process as well. We are working towards, you know, metrics and priorities as outlined in the watershed management plan. You know, these are here for your review. They're behavior change outcomes that we're able to measure, primarily related to goal 1, but we also see, some instances where this also aligns with both of the goals. For example, increased instances of deep-rooted native vegetation along lake shorelines and stream banks really applies to, our shoreline program, as well as, reaching behavior change. So that second list are really the metrics that we're measuring for program outputs, kind of as they relate to both of the goals. These are the things that were identified in the watershed management plan. We are taking the time to establish all of the baselines. The data is largely there already. We're just still doing some documentation, but we are seeing, we're pulling those baselines together. We're seeing some progress. We're also having conversations about other ways to assess the quality of our programs, and are we being successful in our outreach efforts. So each year, and last year was the first year that we did this, we started to create an education outreach annual implementation plan. It takes the guidance from the watershed management plan, it takes the guidance from our comprehensive education outreach plan, and it becomes the work plan that we use to be proactive in our work as opposed to reactive. We have conversations with all of the program and project staff. We look at the priorities as set forth by the board, by the watershed management plan, by the activities that we're doing. And it's really that coordinated planning and implementation across the organization. There's also a lot of crossover here with our interagency communication, because we do a lot of collaboration with our partners. So for the 2024 identified priorities, these have kind of risen as the highest priorities that we have for this year. However, we're always open to additional input and conversation about where we should be focusing our attention. In addition, we are very adaptive and resilient as topics and issues come up. So at the top of the list this year, it's our 25th anniversary of the district. And so as I shared last week, a lot of our work, we are going to put through the lens of a 25th anniversary and kind of bring that as part of our branding. Another priority for this year was staffing. We do have a new education and outreach coordinator on board. He's working with the support from, a design consultant and others. And we've been doing a lot of, onboarding, attending, he's already attended an MREP meeting. We're making a lot of introductions to local stakeholders, lake associations. He's introducing himself to the educators and the community ed programs in the libraries. And so really kind of people getting to know him and the work that he's going to be doing. And two of the projects that he's already working on involve our social media calendar and kind of getting that up to pace. And then we are working through a workshop calendar for this year. We're also, supporting the work of the office search in PR, outreach, and engagement as is needed and requested. So then we kind of look at this project, program, and partner support that I've pulled out of that list of priorities. It's very important this year. We're working on that improved communication, whether it's plain speak, what our materials look like, the branding that we're using, creating new materials. So to give you an update on where we are so far this year, the 2023 year-end review infographic and the annual year-end report and progress reports are nearly complete and on schedule with some, the infographic always needs to be updated and kind of refreshed. And then this year, we're using the new branding guidelines in our year-end report and our progress report. Our tools and rules document is in final editing and it will be available for our March workshops and then other uses. And we're kind of looking at how adaptable that document may be. And do we need, we might decide that we want some additional supplements, but we're really excited about how that tools and rules is coming out. One of the things is related to the AIS program. In our conversations with Garrett, he identified a need for a Flowering Rush homeowner information piece. And so that's something that we're going to be working on as we head into summer 2024 for the AIS program use. We're really paying attention to the communication that we have regarding permitting and inspections and site visits. So a few things that we've added this year, we've added 2 types of door hangers that we can use, whether we're doing a permitting site visit or a different kind of, maybe a site visit for one of our other programs, that we can leave these on the doors of people's houses and give them some additional information, contact information. And we've been working on postcards related to the shoreline program, and we've been discussing some other uses for these postcards. And then, another example was a discussion to, we always send out a reminder to our permit holders as we enter spring, reminding them of their, permit requirements and sediment and erosion control. This year, with the unseasonably warm weather, we took a proactive approach to reach out to permittees kind of in the middle of winter, which is not on our traditional calendar of activities. So we're also taking a different approach with Arts in the Park this year. We are setting up a programming schedule so that each week we're focusing on a different Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District program or project. And so different staff will be out there with our education outreach staff at the Arts in the Park. So, and we'll be able to promote that in advance. So if you have permitting questions, you can come out and meet Mike Sandiger. And then he'll also be doing some other best practices that we can share with people at that event. We'll have AIS, we'll have shorelines, put a variety of different things through our Arts in the Park calendar. Partnerships are a big part of the work that we're doing. This is kind of a long list. It is not all inclusive, but it's kind of some of the things that we've been spending quite a bit of time on recently, and where we're getting a lot of response. So dead end streets is kind of this word that we use for the city-owned properties around Forest Lake. And there's a lot of opportunities for some shoreline demonstration areas. There's opportunities for some stormwater treatment. And there's a lot of opportunities for engagement and education on those spaces. And so, our shoreline folks and our stormwater folks are having, doing inventories and looking at those properties. Interagency conversations and education outreach conversations are also taking place with the city so that we're all kind of supporting each other as we look for some collaborative opportunities to address those properties. We're looking at, we will be creating a shared communication between the city, the Forest Lake Lake Association, and the Watershed District. We're meeting with the city this February with planned implementation this spring so that when new property owners come to the lake in Forest Lake, they will be getting a communication from all 3 of us to provide them with resources and information. And if this works well, we'll talk to our other cities and other lakes and try to do the same thing in those areas. We've had the wetland dumping project going for a couple of years. This year we were able to update the sites. We were able to transfer the map. And then we do have some additional cities who are interested in participating on that with us. And so that's really looking out towards fall, but we don't want to be surprised when fall gets here. So that's something that we're looking at. The local schools and organizations, Adam's already been communicating with these partners on their needs and beginning to schedule programming and developing support materials to see how we can support them. We have our longstanding membership in MREP. We've been participating in Adopt a Drain. We've got the watershed partners and their resources. We've also we've joined Blue Thumb and have access to those materials. And that's a really great kind of sharing, resource sharing opportunity for us. We get a big return so if you like the Roots display that's out there in the main room, that's through that Blue Thumb partnership. We're doing a number of presentations inside the watershed district and outside. Our work is really getting recognized and we've got a lot of exposure. So everything from, you know, kind of working through the Lower St. Croix and the Washington Water Consortium and some of those regional groups. Comfort Lake, Forest Lake staff were recruited to speak at the Bowser Academy this year, highlighting our shoreline program and specifically our legacy land payments and kind of the comprehensive approach we're taking to shoreline and the inventory. We presented at Minnesota Watersheds, where we were also a finalist for the legacy land payment program. Our staff were recruited to speak at the DNR roundtable, and that's an invitation only program that we were asked to share about our programs there. And I apologize, I see we have Minnesota Watersheds on there twice. Well, that's because we presented and we were a finalist for an award. So very excited about that. We are continuing to, you know, kind of work on articles and try to improve our media relations. As I said, there's a lot of interest in several of our programs, specifically our shoreline programs, our legacy land payment program, and several of our projects. And we've even recently been contacted by Minnesota Lakes and Rivers. They would like to feature us in one of their upcoming newsletters, have an article about the work that we're doing that goes out to lake associations and members and organizations across the state. So including members within our own watershed district. So. And finally, the partnership and grant seeking efforts. There are a lot of grants these days that require collaboration and partnering. And so we're really doing a lot of capacity building and working on those partnerships to improve grant seeking. While this is a presentation on education outreach, you know, all of our programs are working together. And I think that work is, you know, that interagency partnership work is starting to kind of show. We're pretty excited because what we wanted to happen, you know, we finally had some success, and one of our cities came to us with an idea to partner for a grant. We were already talking to them about this project. We had, you know, been working on a different grant application. They were like, hey, we've got this opportunity. So we really felt that was a win, and we want to kind of continue moving in that positive direction. So the shorelines work, this is really just part of our comprehensive shoreline program, but education outreach is kind of there to kind of serve and support and kind of uplift this effort. We've been spending a lot of time on the communication for the shoreline inventory, and by we, you know, I want to give great kudos to Aiden Reed because he really has been, you know, digesting that information and starting to work with partners and share that, translating it really to kind of action and recommendations. And I know you'll be hearing from him next, so I won't go too much into that. But those presentations are to everyone from the lake associations and other stakeholders, including our tribal entities. Aiden has been working on the postcards, promoting the district technical and financial resources. We've got Lake Association communications and resources that we've been doing and developing. And then also the shoreline workshops. And we were having conversations about, okay, the what next? What do we tell? You know, we've got these resources, but how do we really engage people? So we are going to be piloting lake-targeted shoreline workshops that will align with their shoreline inventory. It will have lake-specific data. We'll be able to integrate some AIS and some other information specific to their lake. And we're very excited about the possibilities for that. And, you know, it's a pilot. If it goes really well, we'll do it again in the future. If we get feedback that needs to change or we know that we can get a better return by just having more generalized shoreline workshops, we will go back to just doing that. But we're very excited about these lake targeted workshops that we're developing. And then again, as we spoke earlier, or as I said earlier, we're going to have letters going to new shoreline owners. You know, the city of Forest Lake is going to be coordinating that for us, and we think it's a really great opportunity for us to get to people when they first purchase their properties. very excited about the Bone Lake delisting. You know, that's gonna be kind of a real gem for this year. The Bone Lake Association has already agreed on on collaborating with us on that. We did find out that Bone Lake elected a new president, so we'll be working with Tom Fury more closely on this collaborative celebration. We're planning to have a kickoff meeting. We're hoping still in February, but at the latest, it'll be in early March. And we're looking at combining, you know, different kinds of promotions and outreach efforts with an event, and then having kind of articles and a full press, right? And then again, a targeted workshop tied to their shoreline inventory, and we'll be, you know, piloting it on Belmont. So as we look through, you know, look at resiliency and PR and crisis communication planning, you know, how is the education outreach program working on that? We're supporting the work of the resiliency planning and the flood management planning with the community engagement and workshop that we're right now is scheduled in March of 2024. We're working with the consultants to confirm a date, but that's, you know, we're really hoping to push it forward sooner rather than later. So we've you know, gone for March and are taking that bull by the horn. So specifically the shoreline PR, MP&G surveys and focus groups to support the PR plan. We'll be seeing that work taking place March and April. And being able to kind of already start implementing. We've had some great conversations with them. And then kind of are ready to do that general PR RFP, kind of letting Adam kind of get his feet underneath him, get through a couple of these big projects, and then this spring also looking to do that PR, or early spring, excuse me, doing the RFP for a more general comprehensive PR plan.
So did we hire a firm, MP?
Not for the general PR, but we have been working through the contract and working with MP&G. That's the group that get the salt out and
last fall.
Okay, I thought we were gonna have, okay. I haven't seen a proposal for memorization, no.
Yes,
We had a presentation, and so
Okay.
what we decided to do is go with these people because they had
Okay.
such great success with that
With that
salt.
salt thing.
Yes, and use them on the shoreline program in particular. And then we would go out for a RFP
Right.
for the whole thing.
which they are hoping to get.
So that was, it was so long ago that I forgot about it.
Yeah,
So that was last fall.
Yeah.
So why are we just doing focus groups now? Why wouldn't those done over the winter time when people are more apt to come to them when they're stuck in the house and they need some, you know, some reason to get out and do something?
Sure.
So, I mean,
So we generally don't do programming like that during the holidays. And so then we were, because we were down several staff members, it was the one thing that I had to push into this spring, and I may have made a wrong choice. But it was, you know, we were still doing a lot of work, and MP&G has met with us numerous times to give us guidance on how to move forward. So
but they're doing the focus group work. You work
they are
there.
going to be doing the focus group.
So even though we didn't have staff or Jessica wasn't here, they still could have done the work, right?
They could have, but I was trying to work through the contract, and it wasn't something I had the bandwidth to do. Emily had offered to help, and I was working on it, and it was just something that I chose to move off of, because we were still making progress in some of the other work.
I think it's good to do focus groups work, but you know, I would suggest that we've got almost 2 years now into this program, and so I think that Aiden probably has a pretty good idea of what the objections are of people, you know, why are they reluctant to go to a natural shoreline? We had a lot of other work done already by other groups about how people feel about things, so we could probably use that information internally very effectively, I would think.
That's a
That
discussion that can be
WCCO
had.
thing we did was really good, I thought. They showed how they had that technique of using a self-evaluation of your own property, and that turned a lot of people's heads right away.
where was this?
This is WCCO, tape
That
that
was-
sent around.
The Minnesota Lakes and Rivers.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great
Natural
ideas.
park.
That's the kind of idea you're looking for. What
but that's,
causes them to change their attitude. and
yeah,
that
that's
was
the same
one
thing with the Score Your Shore program with
Right.
DNR. That's been around for a decade
Right.
almost. So anyway,
Anyway.
here's my comment is that I think it's fine to do that because what you want to do is make sure that what your message is what the public is ready to receive.
Right.
And what things can you do to make it more successful? So I don't have a problem with this. I mean, this is a long time coming. We're 15 years behind in a proper communication plan. So even if there's some rough edges, let's get going. We can't delay it anymore. It's just
No, I agree.
too critical. We wasted too long and here we are about to embark. But the one thing I would say is that when you're especially doing things that are going to go to the public, which is almost all of this plan, make sure that you've shown the board the documents before they go out to the public. Because we can catch some things that maybe you didn't catch and maybe have some insight on our contacts with the citizens. We're the citizens too, we're just representatives. So I would encourage you to do that as well. Include the board at those review steps. So that's not just staff looking at it, it's those of us that represent the citizens, okay?
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah,
you for
that's,
that input.
that should be done before you print it.
Yes, absolutely. Or send it out to the public.
Mhm.
Because that's been a
So,
problem in the past.
Yeah, we
is
should
that-
have a formal sign-off process.
Yeah,
just like any company
things,
does.
and that's a good idea. Put it down as a process because it is a process
Because the legal has
and
to sign it, everybody
with
has to sign
check
it.
off points and then nothing gets missed.
So, I mean, if I had a time machine, I would have gone back and said to Emily, in December, hey, there's a lot going on, can I get some help with this PR plan? MPNG was meeting with us, we were moving forward. I do really appreciate the work that Chuck has done to kind of guide that process for me. And so we're moving forward. And then the general PR RFP will, kind of get through the first steps of this, and then we'll go out for that here.
Mhm.
A crisis communication plan, the deadline for that is to have that draft in Q1, and we're also, within the budget, we have some funding for professional review of that. And so we're wanting to kind of look outside of our organization to make sure that we're not missing anything in that crisis communication plan. So kind of the workshops and programming part of the work that we're doing, and this is very, a lot of public facing work as well. A shoreline workshop for contractors. It's been something that's been talked about a lot and we're really excited. This was initially scheduled for the end of February. MREP had issues with the location, and so March 4th is when that will be. It's 9 to 11, and it's for shoreline contractors. Our staff is already doing a really, we discussed this morning at a program team meeting, some of the ways that we could get out and try to get as many of the contractors that we have access to know about this, and hopefully attend. And then if they don't attend, can we get some information as to why? And then after this March 4th one, we'll regroup, we'll work with MREP, we'll talk internally, and we'll look to coordinate others. Blue Thumb is also kind of participating in creating some of these shoreline workshops for contractors.
I have a comment on this workshop. Is it possible that as a board, we can encourage contractors that we hire to have gone through this training or a similar training?
That's a very interesting comment, and it echoes one that we had today. Right now, we don't have a process to say that contractors that go through this get to be on a special list or something. But that was part of the discussion today, was do we want to make a recommendation to have a priority list or, some way to make sure that these contractors are going through the program.
Thank you for bringing it up. I was just about to as well. We did have a conversation about this, and maybe it was before your time, but the shoreline workshop for contractors, it was our district that proposed the workshop for real estate agents years and years ago. And this is the same thing. And so it doesn't have to be a big deal, but it's something along the lines of the good housekeeping seal of approval. And so if you think about it in that way, contractors that go through this and then understand what the objective is and will pledge to work under those protect the shoreline rules, then they need to have some type of certification. And I always thought that was a really big, important part of that program, because otherwise it's pretty meaningless. People are going to want to know, who can I go to that I trust? And if we have a list, if we have some type of designation, a little certification logo or something they can put on their website, then I think that's a good thing. So I would
And in
encourage
fact-
to include that.
And the fact that it's hosted by local government partners in Chisago and Washington
Mhm.
County, I think we need to get the word out that, you know, we, as a watershed district, are not gonna hire a contractor unless you've had some training.
Yeah.
And I would hope our other partners in the county would go along with that, and I'm sure they would.
Yes, oh, yes.
And then the word gets out to contractors that, hey, if you wanna work here,
Mhm.
you better show up. What do you think, Mike?
Yes, Mr. President, so, I mean, there's other avenues that are similar to that, I mean, both in the salting world, but also then just other lawn care. You know, certain cities will require for ordinance, that they have to at least register with them, so they have some control. But I think that is a good point, and even whether or not then, we would wanna specify that, in the future that we would set, and this is maybe more of a legal question, you know, if anybody is doing work, landscaping work or stuff that triggers a permit, if they would also need to have some required training. Wouldn't be too you know, dissimilar to, licensure requirements in certain professional. Landscape architects are required to have so many hours a year. Maybe it's one of the things that we could offer to that professional society is to provide CEUs for those types of individuals or firms.
Even if we just start small and we do it for our district, to start out with, it's like Blue Thumb.
Mhm.
You know, and then over time you get other people coming into it and it becomes this big thing. Everybody knows about Blue Thumb now, everybody. So they've been around for a while, but the same principle applies to this. Because people do work on their shorelines, and so we want to make sure that we can give them a list of certified people that understand how to work on and protect shorelines.
And it's not just shorelines. I mean, we hire contractors to do wetland restoration projects.
Mhm.
They
Well,
need to be
yeah.
trained.
Well, I think our engineers are taking care of that, you know, quite frankly,
We'll
but
find
yes.
out.
Yeah.
Well, they're doing it
Well,
later.
That's what we're entrusting them with, is to find certified, or not certified, but qualified people
Yes.
that know the work that they're doing, and then they're the overseers. So, but yeah, I mean, it could work at that level too, for the big projects.
Yes.
Mhm.
Mr. President, maybe Beth, we can ask the WCD and the soil and water, they maintain a list of contractors that they give to people, how people get on those lists, or any of those things, we can, you know, have this further conversation about
Mhm.
training.
And I usually also refer people to the Blue Thumb list, because, you know, that's there. Aiden does, maintain a local list. We discussed that this morning in our programming. And then one of the things he shared was, for the people that are on my list are people I know that are gonna do a good job.
Good.
So, what we wanna do is kind of get more people on the list,
Mhm.
because they're all doing a good job. So
This
we
is-
will take that. I'm excited to hear their support on that. Like I said, the staff was kind of discussing that today. And so we will continue. Just one other thing, Aiden's list, he also does cross-reference with the Washington Conservation District in Chicago each year. So we're kind of keeping on top of that, but, want it to be the best exclusive list that is easy to get on if you go through the training and commit to doing the right thing, so. Shoreline workshops in general, we're gonna have our first one scheduled in March 2024. Adam and I have had a couple of meetings, one in particular where we're really kind of starting to talk about programming. So, we need to kind of get the specifics on that one, because we wanted to kind of coincide with piloting some of these lake-specific workshops. And you know, how much capacity we have to do those. So, We're planning, those workshops right now. And then, other programming, we are working with MREP to schedule another realtor workshop. And so that will be coming up here, this year. Adam has a great deal of expertise in like community ed and working, offering programs and workshops through that. So he's already working with the community ed folks. We're looking at library program. We talked about art in the park. And then, again, this is a state of the watershed year, where we're gonna really be able to highlight our good work and celebrate 25 years. I'm wrapping up here, just a couple last slides. We're gonna really make a concerted effort to have an increased social media presence this year with a focus on Facebook. The key to that is consistent and frequent posts so that we optimize the algorithms that are out there to drive traffic to our page. Really need to have frequent posts so that when people log into Facebook, your information comes up. And so Adam is working to create a kind of a scheduled editorial and social media calendar so that we'll be able to move from occasional posts to multiples per week and ultimately going to like an every other day or daily post. So that includes, our materials, our programs, our projects, things we want people to know, but also promoting our other partners as well. So we'll do some reposts just to be able to kind of have that information out there. We look at this as a fairly evergreen thing, evergreen effort, so that once Adam kind of gets that social media calendar done, it's something that we can use with just a refresh every year. We always know, we're gonna need to do, clean out your storm drains this time of year, but so it's a good investment. And our schedule for that is that even though posts are continuing to go out, we'll kind of start to ramp this up and begin implementation around March 1st. So finally, we're seeing a lot of, do you want to go back to something? I'm sorry.
No, you finish, wrap up, and
Okay.
I'll do my
Okay.
couple comments.
So, we're excited about the growth in this area. We understand that outreach activities and engagement build upon each other. And so it's that layering of information, that kind of coming back each time and giving them more and more information so as people learn more about us. We feel that we are positioning the district to be a trusted source of information and collaboration to both, to our lake associations, to our partners, to our other stakeholders, and to the very residents of the watershed district. We see that the education program is very comprehensive. It touches all of our programs, all of our projects, and we're really wanting to connect those efforts to the people. We have our eyes on outcomes and goals. How do we measure success? How does the watershed management plan measure success? What is additional success that we can communicate? And so we're looking at what does that evaluation and progress piece look like? And then how do we communicate it as we also tell our story? So that was a lot. Thank you for sticking with me for it. We were trying to balance how to get the information to all of you that would kind of, okay, we've got new staff on board and we have a direction we're moving in and we feel good with it, with also knowing we don't want to stay here forever tonight. So with that, I would open any questions.
Well, first of all, don't apologize for giving a report that's 15 years overdue. And secondly, you've just covered one of my points on that last slide. How are you going to quantify success? I know the few things that I've attended over the last couple of years have had really small attendance, but the board is not presented with that kind of quantifiable data. So make sure that you include that. And so it's also a trigger for the companies that you're working with to hone the message. Why wasn't that successful? So you want to do some type of surveying after an event with the participants, and I didn't see that anywhere, so make sure you do that. Pictures, you had some beautiful pictures in this presentation, and you're going to create those in the documents that and the communication pieces that you're going to do. Make sure you identify them. I think that was Shields Lake up there, and I know that was probably Forest because it was a big long picture of the docks, so, but don't make the reader guess, don't make us guess. Please identify, those type of things.
Can I interject something real quick? We do try very hard, it's not always possible, but if we're communicating and sending something specific to Bone Lake, they're only gonna see they should only see Bone Lake pictures. Residents on Comfort.
Get into the habit, that's what I'm
For
telling
some-
you.
oh,
Don't make a
absolutely,
separation if it's just for
absolutely.
one lake or not,
Yeah,
but just do it, as a habit.
yeah.
The other thing, that I wanted to bring up is the, enforcement aspect of some of the things that you talked about on the shorelines. One of the goals was to reduce instances of violations on shorelines and work without permits. Well, you know, I know that over time, there's been a number of violations that we've probably all called in. And it's rested with someone outside of the district, you know, the county, the cities and so forth. And a lot of this happens on the weekends. So I would really want you to think about how we can make that effective. Because so much of this work happens at night in the summer months when we've got more light. So it'll happen after hours. It will happen on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, particularly, obviously. And so we need a point of contact when we see a violation. So work on that, make sure that we have a complete program and we don't say all this good stuff, but then we don't really have an effective way to stop it. But thank you for bringing this forward. I'm pleased with it. And I think that, you know, we've got to take that step and jump in the pool and in the deep water really quickly. So hopefully we can get all of this aggressive agenda to actually come to pass this year. So thank you.
I do too. I'm excited for the work of the year.
Yep.
Thank you all.
President Schmaltz.
Yes, Chris, do you want to make some comments? Go ahead.
I had made a comment in the chat and I just wanted to kind of reiterate that, kind of comes to the topic of contractors getting, classes or some sort of certification. I know Danielson Brothers Landscaping out of Chisago is what the Lake Association calls a lake sponsor. So it's a business that supports the Lake Association. They've been a lake sponsor for a number of years. I would be happy to kind of connect Danielson to the watershed to get their thoughts on this concept of getting businesses such as theirs involved in these shoreline and landscaping classes and best practice education, and if there's an interest. So I think that's where the biggest impact is going to be versus, you know, obviously we have very highly qualified engineers that are working on the projects that the watershed is involved with. But when it comes to kind of rogue homeowners doing whatever they think they want to do, I'm guessing most of the time the landscaping company just comes in and does it. So.
Well, President Schmaltz, may I ask a question and a response?
Sure, go ahead, Beth.
Angela.
Yeah.
We do know through the work that we've got with the Natural Shoreline Partnership and the DNR, we're facing some pretty stiff competition from some of the riprap folks who, you know, their marketing is, you know, really influential for folks. And so we're gonna try to work on some counter marketing. But I would really appreciate if maybe you and I could speak or exchange a couple emails to not only see if Danielson Brothers Landscaping would send some folks to this training, but even participate in some additional surveys with us so that they could tell us what they thought of if they go to the workshop, if they would give us some really kind of unfiltered feedback of what would make it better, what they actually were looking for and their thoughts on it. So maybe you and I could email a little bit.
Of course, I just think that it needs to be approached as a way to maybe potentially give them more business than they're currently getting if they got engaged in this manner. I mean, they're gonna be intimidated or not gonna like what they hear initially. So as long as you position it as a way for both an opportunity for the watershed to get involved with their company, but also for them to get on a list that's, you know, sent out to lake residents as, you know, this is the first company. I know they do a lot of work around the area, so but I'm happy to exchange email just send me whatever your thoughts are and we can go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Manager Schmaltz.
Yes.
I attended at the Minnesota Watershed Conference. I attended the workshop put on by the Carnelian Marine St. Croix Watershed District on shoreline contractor training. And they're facing the same frustrations that we all face as watershed districts, is non-compliance by contractors who will just go in and start moving soil without any permits, or the homeowner hasn't looked into getting any permits. So I think we have to keep that in mind as well. Rather than trying to cater to contractors, we need to draw the line and say, if you want to do business with us, this is what we require. So there's that aspect of it too, is being very firm about who we will hire and who we'll work with.
Yeah, that's important, I guess, but you know, what's really more important in changing an attitude is that you have to be aware of an issue, you have to understand it, you have to understand the consequences and be involved before you even think about changing your behavior. And so what I've been asking is, I haven't seen anything that gets down to the root understanding of our customers. Why do shoreline owners, what are the major objections they have? And contractors, for example, they gotta understand why it's not good to use rock, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, once they understand that, I think there's a better chance that they may be in the toe the line.
So it's a kind of a two-pronged approach here. We have to
Absolutely.
work with the homeowners and get them educated, as well as the contractors to know what they should be and should not be doing.
You know, when I first moved up here and I looked, I saw the Green Lake, I decided to get involved. I never thought about the concept of a lake life cycle. That's the most powerful, that converted me over immediately. A lake will last 300 or 400 years if it's out in the wilderness, but you get it into a city, it can be gone in one generation. So if people understand what causes that and how these pieces fit together, they're more apt to understand that, hey, I gotta do something about my shoreline if I want my lake here 10 years or 15 years from here. So that's the basic premise of changing attitudes, is to get people aware and then understanding, so what? The question is, so what? They need to understand why. So, but
And that's what we've been missing. And that's what this
I agree.
this program is gonna do, but you know, the education for the owner of the shoreline is different than the education for, and the pushback that we're gonna get, as Chris
it's a
mentioned,
different customer.
from the contractors, because they make their money in the rocks and the boulders. And that's what they wanna do. And you need this because your cliff is, or your slope is gonna slide down like, you know, the mudslides in California. Well, that's not gonna happen. So our responsibility is to teach the citizens, the owners of the property, the importance of natural. Well, what does that mean? Well, our experts can come in and tell them what that means. You know, there's a similarity within these ecoregions. And so we have a specific ecoregion that we fit into. And so they can educate them. This is what the trees look like here. This is what the soil is like, and so forth. So that's where our technical experts come in, and that message goes to the public. But the contractors, that's gonna be a hard lift, but they have to understand too that it's not good to come in and bring rocks and boulders where they've never been before. That's okay for the shoreline of the Great Lakes, but not for our little inland lakes. So that, we're on a start, to start the pathway, so that's a good thing.
Any other comments or questions for Beth? Well, Beth, you got a full plate, that's for sure, so. Let's
I think
start
it's
eating-
Adam that has
let's
a
Start
full-
eating away at it.
Yeah. so-
You eat a whale one bite at a time, sir.
Thank you, okay. Moving on then, wait, we've got shoreline program update. I think Aiden is gonna give us that.
Mr.
President
Holman.
Schmaltz?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Who was
I think-
asking the question?
I think Chuck's audio is not working. I see he's trying to talk, but we're not hearing you, Chuck.
You don't hear me?
Yep, now we can hear Chuck.
Okay. Well, I just want to make a small note that there are some legal guardrails on the way the district could use the concept of training or licensing as a prerequisite for contractors to do work in the district. So I would just suggest maybe Beth or Mike or somebody, we just check in and have a conversation before there's discussion with external parties that starts creating expectations, and that sort of thing.
You picked up on a word I didn't hear in any of that discussion, license. We were talking about a good housekeeping seal of approval. You know, you're a good guy.
I mentioned this.
I think, yeah, I was gonna say,
You-
Mr.
you-
Kenny did reference license.
Okay, all right.
Okay, anything else? All right, and then moving on to item B, shoreline program update. Aiden?
All right, Mr. President, managers, we have a very topical follow-up to that presentation, which is the report of our 2023 shoreline inventory. So I will be sharing my presentation here. You should be able to view a slide titled 2023 Shoreline Inventory, Bone, Comfort, and Forest. Give me one moment to get set up on my end. All right, so thanks for carving out some time on the agenda. I did provide the report, which this presentation will reference. We have a pretty thorough, I should say, a pretty thorough report kind of detailing the results of the inventory. This was the inventory conducted between August and September of last year. We covered Bone, Comfort, and Forest lakes. And our objective was to, as outlined in the watershed management plan, inventory the shorelines of those lakes and assess their suitability for shoreline habitat, but also for our goals, which are calling for natural, deep-rooted perennial vegetation. So, the inventories that we used a new methodology, and it's a new to us methodology, I should say. So you'll be hearing me talk about this Score the Shore method. I'll be abbreviating it as STS. Now this is different from Score Your Shore. The DNR did not do us favors on that one. And the difference being STS is really directed at water professionals. It was developed by DNR Fisheries. Score Your Shore is an assessment tool that's targeted towards homeowners, lakeshore property residents, more a do-it-yourself situation. And I'll go into just a little bit about the difference between this methodology and what we've used in the past. Kind of the summary here is that the inventory showed that we have declining shoreline meeting our goals throughout the district, or potentially steady. The last time we conducted this was 10 years ago. It's hard to draw a trend line with 2 points, especially over that time span. But this was a first step in getting that data and beginning to assess that situation. So just a reminder that the goals that we kind of work around with our shoreline inventory is the idea of 75% of lakeshore parcels having 75% natural shoreline condition. And so one element of the STS method is we use standard points rather than dividing it by parcels. So parcels are identified in the goal. We interpret this as being 75% of inventoried points, meaning 75% natural shoreline cover. And the reason we do that, there's some discussion about between watershed management professionals about what direction to go. We chose to go the more standardized point because then we can compare between lakes much more easily. And at the end of the day, we're looking at the whole lake as an aquatic system or as a watershed management system. And the parcel sizes vary so much that it becomes difficult to do that. So this was a decision that was made. I just wanted to clarify that before we start talking a little bit deeper into this. Now, like I said, Score the Shore, a little bit different than what we've done in the past and different from Score Your Shore. So STS was developed by the DNR. It's part of a habitat assessment method. So when we talk about habitat, we're talking about that shoreline, and aquatic zone can be viewed as a habitat matrix. And so we took this method that has been used as a rapid assessment tool for about, I want to say originally it was used in the late 2000s, so 2008, 2009 it was developed. So it's been used and it's used on a number of lakes throughout the state. So it provided us a nice kind of template to start with. We did make some adaptations for our inventory. The notable one is that this isn't a survey, this is a census. We looked at every 100-foot point on the lake. We did not go and do, a selection of points. We saw all of the shoreline of all 3 of these lakes.
Would you repeat that sentence that you started out with? This is not a survey, it is a what?
It is a
Census.
census or an inventory. Yep,
Of,
we
of
have
the
a document.
natural conditions. So it doesn't follow property lines.
Correct, yep,
Okay.
so rather than being a survey where we took various points scattered throughout the lake or some sort of systemic method, we cataloged the entire lake shore. It was comprehensive.
Okay.
And that's what the watershed management plan calls for, and that also seemed to provide us with the most effective data for our purposes. So the STS method yields a score on a scale of 100 for major watersheds throughout the state. The maximum is 82, the mean is 67, and the minimum is 37, just to give you some perspective. So most water bodies are scoring, in a moderate, are just barely into the moderate category of shoreline habitat health, with the maximum being, is not in the high zone. So when we're seeing these high habitat numbers, it's going to be in smaller water bodies, probably more isolated. So to give you that perspective, you're going to be hearing a lot of lows, very lows, and some moderates. And I do want to give you the perspective that high is what we are seeking to attain. Not many places are high in the state at this point. So STS.
In the whole state, not just the metro?
Correct. Of the major water bodies included in the DNR's database.
Okay.
So STS, numeric score, low to high, it's a standard metric throughout the state. Our district goals specifically are natural shoreline condition. And that is one component of STS. So just trying to avoid confusion as we discuss that a little further. Brief examples, 100% natural shoreline cover. That would be a very high STS score. 75 to 100%. This one would be a little less, 50 to 74%. And you'll note not a lot of shoreline trees or shrubs, but they do have that natural shoreline cover, which is what we are looking for as a watershed goal. And again, 25 to 49% natural shoreline cover. And then all the way down to a 0%, which we saw quite a bit of, unfortunately. And so when we look at the lakes the 3 lakes that we looked at, Bowen, Forest, and Comfort, the total scores were low for Comfort and Bowen and then very low for Forest. Now that's the lake-wide score. For us, we want to delve a little bit more deeply, and we're really focusing on the shoreline score for the rest of this presentation. I'm happy to talk more about the aquatic and shoreline scores. Those are helpful data points that we now have that we'll be tracking, in the future. But for the purpose of this report and the presentation, shoreline was our focus. So starting with Bowen Lake, we had a moderate shoreline score. So we did not see a lot of deviance from our previous, I'm afraid you can't see my points very well here, but we saw a brief decline in the aquatic shoreline meeting our goals. So I have it on the next slide, I apologize. 53% of our parcels were meeting the goal of 75 to 100% natural shoreline, with the next largest category being those with 50 to 74%. So Bowen Lake is doing pretty well in terms of meeting our goals. Now, what we do want to be focusing on is the fact that we still have, about 18% with less than 25% natural shoreline cover. So Bowen Lake is kind of in a static trajectory, but there's reason for optimism there. And then, of course, we have this broken down throughout the lake. You can kind of see those areas that are road is the predominant land use. So that's public ownership, tend to have higher scores. And that's kind of be a theme we have in this report, is that areas with higher amounts of private ownership come with greater challenges for management. So you'll note that our shoreline score, when taking into account the canopy specifically, or the lack thereof, shoreline scores are going to be worse than the natural cover. So that's important to us as we look at the lake management, because not only do we want to see that natural shoreline cover, but we also want to see that woody vegetation present. That does absolute wonders in terms of stabilizing shorelines, preventing erosion, then also, of course, has habitat impacts, fisheries impacts. And then what we're really looking for in this is kind of these hot spots. And so, this is a great map where we got a lot of blues, a lot of greens, love to see it, but we do have those pockets of red and orange. And so that's what we'll be targeting then. Beth kind of alluded to that. We have mailings and targeting ready to go for these kind of lower tier of scores. We can identify those parcels and make sure that we are directing outreach at those individuals. These pockets, arise naturally. We have areas that are more prone to erosion, and so folks tend to think that they need to take steps that they really shouldn't be taking. Or it can be just areas where one neighbor sees something and that kind of spreads, both good and bad. So we'll be kind of targeting those spots, and we'll talk about those on the other lakes as well. So a deeper dive on the characteristics of Bone Lake shoreline. This is kind of the spread of overhead woody habitat. That's very important for fisheries, and that also indicates where we have some woody cover. Trees and shrubs, and then natural cover. So again, 79 points were where we need them to be for the Bone Lake natural cover, which is great. And 26 points were awful close. It's really just those reds, those oranges, and then the yellows that we need to move up. And so what that looks like is we need 112 points to be at our goals, which equates to about 3,300 feet of shoreline. Now that 3,300 feet of shoreline is a big number, but what that comes down to is 5 restorations a year for the next 7 years to meet our 2031 goals. So, some of these numbers are disappointing to look at, but really we're very achievable in terms of doing these projects. And that's assuming a 100-foot parcel size. Again, trees and shrubs is a really big thing. We saw a lot of deforestation on our lakes. And so I do need to kind of emphasize that even though that's not accounted for in our watershed management plan, that's that's something that folks are able to get a lot of interest in, whether it's shrubs, trees. Folks like having that on their shorelines. And so that's something we can use as an outreach tool. Just a note on land use, predominantly single-family residential. Happy to break these down in a deeper conversation if you like. This is included in the report as well. And then a comparison statewide. So Bone Lake ranks 463rd out of 824. We're in the lower half. That's kind of what we had anticipated, but that's just the way it is, I suppose. It's getting better. And really, we try to make these numbers addressable. It's really very achievable for the Lake Association members or for homeowners to kind of take direct action here. Planting trees, we have 12 points that did not have any shoreline trees or shrubs. That is a very fixable problem. You'll hear Beth always saying, don't go there, don't mow there. It's a great point. We had 2,700 points that did not have adequate or had less than 25% natural vegetation. That's, again, relatively easy to address. And again, a tree falls in the lake, don't pull it out. It's doing work. Just emphasizing those points, we're trying to make this a little bit more approachable for folks. Comfort Lake, similar to Bone, a small decline. We saw 59.3% natural cover as opposed to 61%. I call that a flat trend, especially given the variance in this method. We'd like to see it go up, but I would call it flat at the moment. And just a note on the very low aquatic score. I don't talk much about the aquatic score. Happy to go into that a little deeper at another time. It's just a data point we have right now. Predominantly, it was impacted by docks. It also seems to be the one that has the most variance with water levels and the season. So I won't go much further into that, but I did want to address that very low score. So Comfort Lake, just under 60% meeting our shoreline goals. That's fantastic. However, 29% of the shoreline has less than 50% natural cover. That's kind of a focus area for us. You can again kind of see those scattered throughout the lakes. The shoreline scores are lower again than the natural shoreline cover would show, and that's mostly lack of vegetation, or excuse me, lack of tree canopy and shrubs. So lots of opportunities to improve the canopy of the lake. And again, we can identify those pockets throughout the lake as well. Again, lots of blues and greens, which you love to see, but definitely some areas of yellow, orange, and red that we are targeting then with outreach. And again, pockets of deforestation. So we have 9% of parcels that had 0 shoreline trees and shrubs, which relatively easy to address, outsized impact on the erosion of that shoreline. So breaking those numbers down a little bit further, we have a goal of 89 points with 75 to 100% shoreline. We were at 70. So that's 1,900 feet of shoreline we need to reach to meet our goals. And that actually only equates to 3 restorations a year to meet our 2031 goals. So 300 feet a year for the next 7 years. So lots of work to be done, but very.
All that degradation was during COVID, by the way. A lot of it.
Again, just another note on land use, very high amount of single family residential as anticipated. And most of it, the rest is roadway. Happy to break that down another time if needed. It is included in the report. Regionally, we rank 663rd out of 824, and that would place Comfort in the lower 20th percentile. So it's notable that Comfort Lake had a higher shoreline score than Bone, if I recall, but the overall lake health did not measure up. So that's why we're kind of viewing these holistically. We want to make sure we're taking a whole lake approach when it comes to improving this STS score. We have similar areas to focus on Bone, 11 points without shoreline trees, 18 points to improve with natural vegetation, of course, and love overhanging woody habitat. And Forest Lake, we had kind of anticipated that Forest Lake would present more challenges, and it did. So the good news is that it went up 3% based on our last inventory. Again, I call it flat. It may indicate an upward trend. We just need more data. But 30% is better than 27%. So that's good news. Again, looking at shoreline natural vegetation, 30% were meeting our goals, which is excellent. But we had 24% that had 0 natural vegetation on their shoreline. And so that is a very obvious target for us in terms of prioritization, where really any amount of natural cover is going to provide tremendous benefits in the shoreline habitat and erosion. And then also is going to boost the score tremendously. And this shows a lot of red. This is the shoreline scores. So again, this is not just shoreline natural cover, as is the goal in our watershed management plan. This heavily reflects the lack of canopy on the Forest Lake shoreline. And it really shows that. We had only 1% of parcels, or excuse me, points with a high shoreline score. So again, those shoreline scores, a lot of red. We do have those pockets of blue and green, but a lot of red to be addressed. And we will address them. It makes it a little bit more difficult to prioritize, but we do have some tools available. We'll be starting out with sending postcards, just reaching out to these property owners, making sure that we can get the ball rolling on some projects here. I have this broken down by basin, and this is just natural shoreline, excuse me, yes, natural shoreline cover. And again, we have hot pockets throughout that we'll be addressing. And then again, breaking these down a little bit deeper, we had 202 points that met our goals, which is great. We need 505. So what that looks like is an additional 30,000 feet of shoreline that will need to be improved to meet our goals. It doesn't all have to be the red. It can be the green as well. So folks that are already well on their way, just need a little nudge sometimes to get across the finish line. But what that looks like is 59 restorations per year to meet our 2031 goals. Now, I do want to note too that when I say those restorations, that doesn't have to be a $15,000, complete issue, especially on Forest Lake, where we tend to have some more shallow slopes, especially on the south side. Those can simply be letting, a buffer strip return to a more natural condition. Lots of folks who are mowing all the way down to the water level could, come from red to blue pretty quickly, pretty easily. But that speaks back to Beth's points about education outreach, where you have to change the perception of those things. And again, I just really do want to emphasize the shoreline trees and shrubs condition on forests. Folks love trees, folks love shrubs. And so this is a very easy spot for us to start with, where we just do not have a lot of trees and shrubs on Forest Lake. And there's lots of great messaging potential around that, reforest, Forest Lake, something like that. But both from, while it's not a specific goal in our watershed management plan, this is something we look at as staff and say, all right, we'll help, this will help with erosion, certainly, but also just looking at the whole shoreline habitat zone, very, very important. Land use, single family residential, as we suspected. And I'm happy to go more in depth in that in the reports as needed. Forest Lake, compared throughout the state, we would rank 817th out of 824. And that is the bottom 1%. And looking at lakes in that area, it's lakes that have similar challenges to Forest Lake. Prior Lake, I want to say was one of them. No, it wasn't Prior Lake. The lake that's down in Albert Lee is one of them. Some lakes up in Stearns County, I wanted to say. It's lakes that have high levels of development, with high levels of private property ownership. So we are not alone in facing these challenges. It's something that's being addressed throughout the state. And same areas to focus on with forest. Tree planting, if an area is not being used, let it return to some form of natural vegetation. And then, of course, more woody habitat is always good. And so again, what's next? I didn't catch that. Go ahead, whoever that was. All right. And so that's, the presentation. And what we'd like to do is take this information and we'll be preparing it to be disseminated to our lake associations. We've already had outreach from Comfort Lakes Association and Bone Lake Associations. So very happy to share these in a little bit more tailored, more of a tailored format, and make sure that folks know what the plan is and how we can work together to meet our goals. They can seem lofty, but I think especially Comfort and Bone demonstrate just how close we really are and how achievable those goals can be, even if they are really ambitious, which is how goals should be. And with that, happy to take some questions or discussion.
Okay, very good. I think it was an excellent presentation, very professional, very thorough, very timely. So it's a big piece of the puzzle we need on the shoreline program. We've got a nice base now to operate from. I would just encourage you, though, to, again, as I said earlier in the meeting, what do we have to correct? We have to find out why people are doing what they're doing, but especially no trees on Forest Lake. What's the major problem there? Well, one major problem I know we have is that the city's not enforcing the regulations. So we got people cutting trees down faster than we can put them in. So if we start putting in fresh trees and somebody comes in and cuts them down, the next owner, so that's something that you should point out, and you can't control that, but the board has to take it on, or the watershed or the lake association can do that to a large extent too. It's a political issue, and you can ask candidates that are going to run for office, would they support this resident or not? If they don't, we won't vote for them. So, that's the kind of stuff you can do, and it gets results. But so I would encourage you to kind of put a list down of what you've learned as being obstacles, and then the communications people and even the board, depending on how big of a problem it is, has to address those issues so we can get people to understand why it's important. They have to understand the so what. So what? I got rocked. So what? So that's a good question to remember. So, Jackie?
Yeah, thank you. Just to piggyback on what Steve just said, I had written down that we really need to present this to the planning and zoning departments in every one of our major cities, and maybe even the planning commissions, because that's where it all starts. First it's the regulations, but if we need to address this, I think as a district, if we want certain regulations, then we've got to revisit our rules and regulations area. Because the way I understand it, Chuck will always have more nuance in an answer, but we set the rules for how we need to have land use for the achievement of the clean water goals that we've laid down. I hope you don't take offense at this, Aiden. This is a very nice report. And so I have two things to point out, that before you meet with Comfort Lake, make sure you correct them. There's Bone Lake constantly referenced in the Comfort Lake section. And I don't know if some of the wording was, maybe copied and pasted and then refined. But if you look at the narrative on just about every page, at least three three sites I know of, it says Bone Lake instead of Comfort Lake. So make sure you clean that up. And then for that presentation, because the Lake Association represents both Big and Little Comfort, make sure that you have an answer for how come you didn't do Little Comfort. Okay. And that's really about all I saw. It's different than I expected. I think that the way that you put this together from the scientific perspective, the technical perspective, is going to fit very well into the initiative that Comfort Lake is undertaking this year, which is the Score Your Shore program. And that's to engage the individual homeowner in that process. And so you can help us, I think, guide that and fit it together with this technical report that you've presented. There's a lot of overlay for it, but Score Your Shore is really the responsibility of the individual property owner. So we get down to that level, the boundary level that your report doesn't. So I think it's going to work really, really well. So we're excited to have you come and talk about this with our group in about a month. So thank you.
Manager Schmaltz.
Manager Buckman.
We had Aiden I went on a boat tour with Aiden this fall, and he took us around along with Tom Furry, our president of the Bone Lake Association, and talked us through the assessment. And then we had our Bone Lake Association meeting. And what we discussed at that meeting was, how do we change people's practice of what they're doing with their shoreline? And we felt that, certainly whatever the watershed district can do would be helpful. But we felt to get something to happen, we have to go neighbor to neighbor. And we're small enough, there's only 80 of us around the lake. And we know who are those that perhaps really need to improve their lakeshore. How can we approach them in a friendly way and persuade them? And so we're having that conversation now. We're looking at the financial aspect of it. I mean, we have the grant program that is coming through the watershed district, but can we as an association perhaps provide some financial funding and encourage people to change their shoreline? So I think that's something to consider as we look at associations. Being the heavy and trying to get people to change their practice with regulations and enforcement, we know that doesn't necessarily work so well. But if we go neighbor to neighbor, maybe we can make some changes.
If you have a good story for them.
Right.
President Schmaltz.
Yes.
May I respond to
Sure.
Manager Baki? Manager Baki, that's fabulous. And so if there's anything that the education outreach team can do to support our partners in the Bone Lake Association or any of the lake associations, let us know the resources and materials that you need. If you need, there's guides out there, we could modify a guide. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could help you develop your packets or have a conversation with us, because we are really looking at ways that we can support our lake association partners, because they're helping us do the lift.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll certainly reach out. And again, I think it is about going to a neighbor and just having a conversation and just saying, this is what we're trying to accomplish. How can you help us? Would you consider? Here are some resources, some financial resources to help you. I think that's where we need to get people to change.
President Schmaltz?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect, thanks.
Oh, okay. This is anecdotal, but it kind of is in the same line. I was at the Minnesota Lake Management Society Symposium on Tuesday. And one of the presenters talked about conversations with lake property owners who would comment that the first property they got, they cut down the trees and mowed right to the lake. The second property they got, they made sure it had a lot of trees and a lot of cover. So there's something about that mentality of needing that look at the sun or look at the shore or whatever they look at. That is part of the culture thing that we deal with. Well, I applaud this report because there were other presentations that talked about all the efforts they're doing to preserve shoreline and preserve and restore lakes into more holistic systems. But nobody really was doing this kind of, not a survey, but this, we got going here of going through the lake and doing this whole inventory. This gives us a baseline to work from, so in years we can see if we've made progress. It also helps to educate in the course of understanding what it takes to make progress. Now, they came out and did an assessment of my place, and quite frankly, I was very disappointed because it came back far lower than I anticipated. But it also opened my eyes to what is expected in order to have a good, healthy shoreline. And yeah, my property is one where they mowed down to the lake until about 5 years, well, about 10 years ago, we started letting it grow back. It takes a change of thinking of how we look at our lakes and how we look at stewarding our time on a lake. This whole concept of the inventory and collecting data, that point was driven home to me a couple times at the sessions down there. When I first sat down at the table, one guy looked at my name tag and said, "Oh," and he turned to the other people and said, "If you need to know how to do stuff, go talk to these guys because they have the data." And this, I think, is one more set of data points for us to be working with and working from. And you know, I heard this at least one other time, well, 2 other times at that same conference, referencing Comfort Lake, Forest Lake watershed, because of the data that we have and how we can show that we've made progress and making progress in ways that we're putting our money into things that make progress. I was very impressed with that kind of feedback, but the whole concept holistically approaching these lakes was really driven home. And I think this data set is another part of the picture that we're trying to put together. So I applaud the efforts here. I'm looking forward to this being a kind of a marker that we work our way up from to get better points, better scores.
Thank you, Manager Taves. Chris, did you want to say anything? Chris may be gone.
Oh, no.
Okay, Mike?
Just one thing on the shoreline piece that, so while it's not part of the current effort, one thing that the district staff have been looking at is the LaSard Sands Electric Heritage Fund in terms of creating a program about permanent easements. So that's the long game part of it, but we talked to executive director before about what this would potentially look like. And then one of the things is to the funding piece would really be turning easements over to potentially to Bowser and then giving them money to do the future enforcement and everything else. What it is all about, and I think that Manager Taves' comments about what people, when they first buy the property and then later on, when they start looking at legacy concepts, then that's the time when most easements are acquired or purchases by land trusts, et cetera. I think it is a really good strategy. If it's something that we can work in as well.
Okay, if no other questions, again, good job. Eden, we needed that and we've got the baseline to operate from this, so that's great. Thank you. Okay, that was our last topic. Now we need summary and approval of board direction.
We have a project update.
Project updates. How can we skip that? Okay, that's very important. Mike, go ahead.
Mr. President, managers, there's a few slides in there if we want to get them up that Blaine put together. And
Oh, sorry. One second.
so, but just
Why don't you
overall.
Jump to the issue, what we have to.
Right, well, I was just gonna let you know that, I mean, I do wanna highlight the success of WJD6 too, I don't wanna highlight only the thing that's
Negative.
wrong. So the JD6 project, you've been driving by Scandia Trail, 97, you'll see that it's complete, they've all been, you know, seeded and covered, and it looks great, you know, people are definitely, a lot of visibility on that, so, and that project, of course, has gone well. In part because we have a very reliable contractor there with Peterson Companies, who has always made a point of, you know, they have a need in their business to, for this material, so they have historically in other past projects, including the Bixby Park one and, Highway 61 and Matson one, they take the material to their yard, compost it, and then repurpose it, typically blending and then repurposing. However, so then kind of, yes, kind of jumping down along, this is just really just intended to provide a little update for the board. You know, here's the kind of site of all the locations. There's that western tributary, JD6, that we had identified through our diagnostic monitoring. And here's kind of some action photos, if you will. And Peterson Company really stepped up in terms of being able to bring some additional equipment, you know, contracting with some other haulers and things like that to get the material out while they still could, given the warming conditions. But so that one's done. The next project I want to talk about here is on Moody Lake, the capstone piece. So the piece along around the barn there, that was phase one, if you will. That went smoothly. All the material was hauled to a pit, and Wayne has gone down and visually inspected that the material is where it's supposed to be in that one. And then late last week, Friday, I was alerted that some of the material on phase two from stuff behind the barn, you see in these photos here, was being dropped off at a different location than the one that had been discussed. Originally, in the contract, we had taken over to this farm field that we've been renting, the Dolan property. And during one of our coordination meetings, the topic came up about having them haul it to a pit, similar to what we've seen in other projects. And there would be, you know, relatively small amount of savings, $5,400. And after quite a bit of discussion over a couple, 3 weeks, I finally then gave the go-ahead that we would proceed with that. One thing, unfortunately, is that that I did not follow up on was the actual change to the contract amendment, or getting a contract amendment in place for that material to be taken to the pit rather than to the Dolan property that the district currently is renting. So, you know, with that, I mean, there was a discussion about it. There was with the contract and our engineer, and the material was heading south to the pit anyway, so there was no reason when staff and the engineer were on site, the trucks were leaving, to suspect it was going anywhere other than the designated location. And somewhere along the line, this goes back to contractor C, training perhaps or something, but because it is discouraging from the standpoint that every contractor should know that there's everywhere in the metro would require permitting these days. So apparently the contractor was approached by a landowner just on Bone Lake, and started hauling some material last Wednesday. And we were, staff was informed that there was some, from a permitting side, that there was material being deposited on a location, but we didn't know there was a connection at that time. So it wasn't until Friday morning. And then I called, had the engineer and Blaine get out there and or contact the contractor right away and say, hey, stop hauling. I've learned today that the amount was 43 loads is what they've estimated. So much more than what we originally thought. And additionally problematic, there was no permit discussion. There is an open permit with this landowner. There's a history as well. And the concern that I have is we did talk about it internally about, would we want to pile some material up and let it compost, if you will, on the Dowling property for a few years, and then be utilized by residents in around Bone Lake, and determine that it's probably not a good idea since it's phosphorus rich. We didn't want to then place it, in any proximity to the lake for leaching. So it's there. There's some erosion sediment control, but it would not meet our standards, or design standards, if we were to have agreed to have placed it in such a location. What we wanted out on Dollar property was more robust. So presently trying to work with council to create an engineer and Blaine to create a way forward here to address the matter. There are definitely some complicating elements to this, including apparent right of access to have it removed. So we expect to have further discussion on it. It's certainly my preference for the reasons stated, because the other bigger problem is that if it remained there, there would be really no way to control what happens to it. We could spread it around, and an estimate would be it would be at least a foot thick if we covered his lawn with it based on the material there. So that's unlikely. You could potentially haul it across the road to this lake lot, and then, would that be then even shortcutting even further the problem that we have with phosphorus rich material being deposited into the lake, and we are trying to do the project for water quality. We would have no ability to say you have to put this kind of seed mix down, or you have to put this kind of cover down. So if we didn't have the open permit, I suppose we could have denied him a permit, and then that would have required it, but that's only further complicated from the fact that the permitted, because he's kind of gone through this process of occasionally bringing some material in and not leveling it and finalizing the site, permit has remained open. So I don't feel that we have, unfortunately. I was hoping to have a final position which we would be confident in and moving forward in terms of saying, yes, we are going to be able to remove material starting Monday or something, but we're not there. So but we will report, I guess maybe the one thing, so we're working with Chuck. It would not be a change order, but rather, I'm trying to remember, change to the contract, but it would really be something then that maybe the board might want to consider, that giving some direction to me to work with council and the board president for any final decision regarding the direction of how this material is to be handled.
Isn't it a breach of contract with the contractor? He violated the terms of the removal of that dirt, that soil.
Well, there's some. Yes.
I don't want to get into the middle of this because.
No, but I'm
Right.
saying,
I know, but we got a legal counsel that's very good.
I understand that.
They'll look at this. I think what we
Yeah.
should do is give Mike the authority he needs.
I agree.
Okay.
I'll
so
make the
this-
motion to give Mike the authority
Okay,
to resolve this issue with the attorney and the president.
And if we need to get the board involved, then we will do that also.
And please insert the proper name of the project for this in the motion when you write it up, okay?
We need a second. I'll second that motion. Okay. Okay, so now we need a vote.
Manager Baki,
Not sure how I should vote on this, if I should or if I shouldn't. I think I will abstain.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
Manager Lowe. President Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, and motion carries. Thank you.
I think that's all there is for the updates.
Okay,
Um,
so now we can move into approval of board direction.
President Schmaltz,
We have a question.
Administrator Kinney, I do. The Little Comfort Lake Sub-Watershed Enhancement was the last slide for the project updates. Do you want to discuss that or let the board members review that on that?
Yeah, we're just moving forward with her. Blaine has a discussion with the real estate attorney tomorrow, so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Chuck, do you have any action steps for follow-up?
I have a couple of corrections on this form. There's just a couple that go really fast.
Okay, what form are we talking about?
We're talking about the summary of board direction.
Oh, okay, I'm
Part of
sorry.
our
Go ahead.
packet.
Okay, right, go ahead.
Going back to 127-22, isn't this resolved and shouldn't we take that off? So that's that. Under the page that has the 23 items, the 12-20-23, where I brought up the issue of the dirt piles, it's actually 2 unstabilized dirt piles. They're still there. And that's on one commercial property on Greenway Avenue. So that's correct with those additions I just made. The 10-26-23 issue, I think, has been retired or is gone, so that can be removed. The Excel Energy, that is in process, so we should have a report, I hope, here in the next month. So just an update there. 10-26-23, the implementation funding installment of 2.2 million, how that can be used. I just wanted to remind everybody that the convene meeting is happening on February 21st. So between this meeting and the next meeting, and you know, this isn't definitive, but there certainly seems to be an effort by the Metro people to really look into the justification of sending the money to the Lower St. Croix, because, you know, they've got an adequate budget now and there haven't been a lot of projects in the Metro. And in the invite to that meeting, every member was requested to bring a project that they want funded from this WBIF money. So I sent Mike an email and asked him to select one that I can bring. I hope he comes to the meeting as well, or somebody from staff. And we can talk about our project needs and what we would like, how we would like to see that moved. So I just wanted to make you aware that there may be some withholding of funds for the Metro. Okay, the general board consensus from 4/27/23, it's almost a year ago. We had talked about doing some bigger signs for our projects and some other places. I just want an update on that at the next meeting, where we're at with that process. And then 1/11/24, Manager Anderson asked staff to communicate with Jack McKinsey. This was a little bit twisted in the write-up. This is part of 2024 planning efforts for E&O and work on providing informational turf workshops. Well, that's really not what I said. What I said was, is Jack familiar with non-turf plants that would be appropriate if someone wanted a look that's close to a turf, but it's the right plant for shoreline. This is for shoreline work. So it was just my ask to staff if Jack could fulfill some of that training that we have to do with people to put natural plants and shrubs in that shoreline area, especially I think for Forest Lake. They can get the look of the turf, but they'll have the benefit of natural plants. So that was really the intent, and I wanted to clarify that. So if Chuck can do his best to make sure that that is more pointed to what I was asking for. Jack is such a marvelous teacher. I mean, I don't know if you've gone to his seminars. I have. He's just really good. And he's doing boat inspections now, and he's equally good at that. He's just very engaging. So I think we could go a long way with that education if we could get him involved.
President Schwal,
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
may I provide some follow-up for Manager Anderson?
Well, why don't we do it after the meeting? We can do that offline.
Oh,
Okay.
sure,
Okay.
okay.
That's it.
As a
Thank you.
suggestion too, we have this project review, but we could use that time to do reviews in other areas. So for example, we could probably go through this
Mhm.
maybe once a quarter,
Mhm.
just to see what they have the staff.
Yeah.
Talk about what's updated.
Yeah, I think we.
Or we could have an update on the communications program,
Yeah,
without being part of the agenda. So I'm gonna suggest maybe I work with Mike on that, and we haven't had anything permitting for a while, so you
Right.
might wanna look at permitting
Mhm.
for a few slides.
Well, we used to do that kind of thing, where we
Right,
would
right.
rotate these different
Projects.
and departments and so forth, and the reporting that goes along with it. And I encourage us to go back to that. It's hard to fit it into 2 hours.
Right, but we can just have a couple slides on and be updated on something pretty quickly.
We
So,
could.
Yeah.
Permitting is scheduled for the next meeting.
Okay,
It got bumped so that we could do some of the shoreline.
Yeah, good.
stuff. Yeah.
good.
Okay, back to Chuck. Any other additions to the need approval for board direction?
Just a few notes, Mr. Chair and managers, regarding the education program. Per Manager Anderson, board is to be included in reviewing outreach and education documents before they're printed. Manager Anderson asked that staff establish and communicate a point of contact for those who observe improper shoreland work. With respect to the Lakeshore Review, President Schmaltz asked staff to pull together their observations about what is persuasive in getting folks to understand and endorse shoreland restoration or native shoreland. Manager Anderson asked that staff incorporate efforts to present the lakeshore work and findings to planning and zoning folks in the cities. And the townships. And then Manager Anderson's direction regarding board direction, the several items just named, I can note the ones where she's asked for staff update, or perhaps we're okay on that. You want me to go through those?
No, that's okay. I think we'll review these more regularly than we have been, so we'll take care of it in the future, but it's good to get caught up here.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else, Council Holtman?
No, that's all.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move into the last topic, which would be the administrative review discussion, and that'll be in closed session, so we'll have to, like we have to take this, right? Okay, so.
I interpreted your comments about.
Okay, we'll just leave it running for now, and then I'll stop the recording after you make a motion to go into closed session.
Okay, thank you.
And then restart it again.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Perfect,
Tori.
thank you.
Whatever was written, I interpreted it the way that you said.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I sent you an electronic copy of that, but it's pretty timely.
Mr. Chair, should I wait for your motion and then depart?
Yeah, that's fine. So I'll move that we go to closed session. The purpose is to just review again Mike's performance, look at compensation, and then also if we have time, which I don't think we're going to, but
Thanks, Ben.
take a look at the SMART goals that we've been working on.
I'll second.
Okay, so I'll do a roll call vote. Manager Schmaltz, aye. Manager Anderson.
Aye.
Manager Baki.
Aye.
Manager Lowe.
Aye.
And Manager Taves.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So
Mr.
I don't have an intent of keeping us long tonight. I think once Mike leaves here, we'll have a few things we want to go through.